here we go. I've been recently into sports more and more. I've never been a super sports fan, but I have not seen a football game since the Super Bowl like 2 years ago when the Eagles lost. But I watch certain events in the Olympics recently, and I learned about an Olympian. Okay, so this person is Ewa Klabukowska. Any sports fans know about Ewa Klabukowska? Anyone? Okay. Well, they were born in 1946 in the Soviet Union. Or was it the Soviet? Yes, the Soviet Union at that time, from Poland. And she was a runner. She competed in sprinting and running. Okay? And I learned about her. Her coach wrote an autobiography only in Polish. And you know what's so great nowadays is if you go into a website from Poland, there's a button you can just say translate to English. And every website in Polish, you can just read it in English. But it's not quite right. Sometimes it says that grammar is off, you know what I mean? But you can more or less get what they're saying. So I went through this guy's autobiography in Polish. And so Ewa's parents were against sports. They said it's not a good idea, it's useless and all that. And so she had a lot of opposition, and yet, growing up, it was what she loved to do. And by 1946, she had qualified for the Olympics in Tokyo. And 1964, so she's 20. And she had won, get this, she had won third place, bronze medal in the 100-meter dash. Okay, this is, if you don't know sports, this is when they talk, there's all different kinds, but when they talk about a foot race, we're going to race from here to here, who's fast, this is the one they go to. It's the 100-meter dash. She won a bronze medal in this. And then she was in a team, it was called the relay race. If you know what this is where you have a stick and you run and you give it to somebody else and then they run with it, and then they give it to someone and they run back and forth passing the stick. And her team in 1964 in the Olympics, they won a gold medal. Now, here's the thing. In America, we lose track of this. We have so many athletes and superstars and sports leagues. It's like, But for a country like Poland, she was recognized. She was recognized, and she got all kinds of newspapers and on the radio station talking to young student athletes and all this. And but that was only the start of her sports career. A year later, in 1965, she set a world record for the 100-meter dash. Okay, and visualize 100 meters, 11.1 seconds. That's pretty fast to me. It sounds pretty fast to me. Okay, so, and that was actually a world record. So at this point, she had this title. She was the fastest woman in the world. 100-meter dash, fastest woman in the world. Now, for a little girl from the middle of nowhere in Poland, she was a superstar at this time. In her country, this was a big deal. The fastest woman in the world is from Poland, and here she is and everything, right? Now, in the 60s, Poland was in the Soviet Union, which was a bunch of communists. There was a communist over by Russia and all of them, and so there was a lot of politics, trying to sabotage. If you ever seen Rocky IV, he fights the Russians. Oh, maybe not. Well, there's a bunch of international politics where they're trying to discredit each other basically and say, oh, the United States, they bribe everybody. Yeah, but the Soviet Union, they're cheating and whatever. So there was a bunch of that going on. And so what happens is, and this had been happening for years, and this is happening now, basically because men almost always are bigger and stronger, what they do is and this is messed up, guys. They would sneak men into the women's events. And the way that they did this was for Olympic competitions, they would actually take you if you're suspected of being in the wrong category. They would put you in front of an international tribunal of women doctors to be visually inspected. This is exactly what it sounds like. Okay, the doctor wants to see you, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. So anyways, this happens, and in 1966, she's in Europe, because this is the in between Olympic years. So you don't have a Olympic, which is the world event, every 4 years. You have a national titles, continent titles. So 1966 Budapest, she goes through this tribunal of doctors' inspections. She's making more records and winning more medals. And at this point, the United States press said that nobody would be able to beat her record for at least another 10 years. She was so fast. She was on fire. She's like lightning. She's super quick. This is her blessing. This is a gift she had. Now, here's the thing. In 1967, she again wanted to compete in the Olympics, and this time there was this politics. People wanted to put you through the ringer. Anything that you could do to get an edge, or anything that you could do to get somebody a stumbling block in them, they throw everything at you, right? And so what happened is she was given a genetic test. And so she took a DNA test. And what had happened is the tests were sent to internationally. So because this was in the Soviet Union, you couldn't just have the Soviets checking their own athletes, and this happens today. This is why referees, we got a referee from the United States, we got a referee from Cuba, we got a referee from Spain or wherever. And so her genetic test came back, and this is what they found. She had a Y chromosome. Now, if you know about this, does anybody know about chromosomes? It's X. This is when they look at you in a microscope. It's science. If they give you an XY chromosome, that is boys, and if they give you an XX chromosome, that is girls. That's how it's separated. She had the Y chromosome. And so she was genetically a male and a man. And this was after being put in the papers and being called a hero and winning a gold medal. Or excuse me, he, right? Awa, he was absolutely disgraced. He was kicked out of sports. He's unallowed to compete anymore. Not only this, her Olympic times were revoked. So she was the fastest woman in the world, but she's not even a woman anymore, turns out. Okay? Completely revoked, never received an apology to this day, and she's still alive. He is still alive. And there was a Polish newspaper, and the front of it had her picture, and it said, you don't have to speak Polish to know what this means. If you've seen these tabloid pictures, there's a picture of Ewa. I don't have the picture here. And it said, Ewa or Adam. It's like, is her name Eve or is it Adam? What's going on? What's going on with this person? International incident, times were revoked, kicked out of sporting, blacklisted, made a laughingstock, and she never competed in sports again for the rest of her life. But it has a happy ending because 2 years later, Awa got married and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Okay? Is this making sense to anyone yet? Okay. Now, this is impossible, right? Right? This is what people say. Now, the reason I learned about this story is because recently in the Olympics, just this year, it was in Paris, because I like boxing, and if you see the Olympic boxers, these are the pros. The guys who's in the Olympics this year, next year, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, these are going to be the pros that you're seeing competing in world levels. So this year, there is a boxer. She's from Algeria, I believe. She, right? And their name is Imani Khalif. Okay? And she was in a females boxing event. And basically, she one-punched this Italian girl, knocked her out, and she started crying. That's not what boxers are supposed to do. Well, and so anyways, the more I looked into this, because I try to get to the who, what, where, whys, and hows of it. I think that's what the news is, and you try to look past the editorialization and the opinions, even though that rarely happens because everything is entertainment nowadays, and you're just entertained by these talking heads making a joke out of everything. So I heard about it, and there was this guy, Matt Walsh. Everybody probably knows Matt Walsh, okay? And he one of the things he's famous for is he made a documentary. It's called "What Is a Woman?" Can anybody tell me what a woman is? Don't worry about it. I went to the dictionary.com. It's an adult female person. There it is. I just saved you 20 or 2 hours on a documentary. It's an adult female. That's a woman, okay? It's not complicated. But he made a whole documentary about it. I didn't see it, to be fair. I'd never even seen it. And so on his show, this was August 12th, not too long ago this year. And I wanted to make sure that I got this exactly. So on August 12th, on Matt Walsh's show, this is his quote. Khalif is a male. Quote, having a Y chromosome makes you a man. Quote, Matt Walsh, the guy who had to make a documentary to figure out what a woman is. Okay? Now, and of course, they put up pictures of these girls, and it's meant to be humiliating. You know, I think that God makes us all beautiful but different. And some of these women have athletic appearances, maybe they're kind of hard appearances comparatively or subjectively or whatever. And, you know, they put up a picture of them and they say, well, what do you think? You know, Y chromosome. Well, first of all, have you seen any of the other? I mean, listen, athletes are not always exactly beauty pageant winners. They're not the same thing all times, okay? But then when you specific out one individually is kind of mean-spirited. So anyway, I'm thinking to myself, well, let me go back to this. I have some papers here. I'm trying to figure out myself, because Matt Walsh is a Christian guy, and he is a conservative. He has a conservative show trying to get Republicans elected and everything like that. And I'm not have anything against him or whatever, but this guy calls himself a Christian, and not only that, but he's qualified to make jokes about who's a man and a woman, and yet apparently he doesn't know himself. Who's the jokes on who? But why? Why does this happen? And this is why this is why it's important for us to keep our minds on God and keep our thoughts on God. I have some definitions that I looked up. Okay. So Matt Walsh, this is a word, it's a German word. I don't know German, I'm going to try and say it. Tell me if you know what it means. Weltanschauung. Did I say that right? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? The Weltanschauung? Okay. So this is a newer word, relatively, so it's about 150 years old, which is new for a word, because most words have been around for a while, except for maybe computers or something. I don't know, maybe they have been. But Weltanschauung means worldview, one word. There's no space. If you type it in line or you want to write it down, you don't put a space. World, the world, and the worldview. Worldview together. You smash them together. It's one world. Okay? Worldview is this: a comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. Okay? I'm going to read it one more time. A comprehensive conception or apprehension of the world, especially from a specific standpoint. Another way to say it is this: the lens through which individuals interpret their personal experience. Okay? So, what has got this guy, and believe me, Eric Starr, welder fabricator from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, did not do more research about the Olympics than a guy whose job it is to do research. I didn't do more research than Matt Walsh. He knows what he's talking about, or he should. But what is his worldview? Okay, I have more. I wrote a lot of definitions down, and I don't know why. So, but let's look at them all. Okay. Here's another definition. Ideology. A systematic body of concepts, especially about human life. Okay, a worldview? No. Ideology. A systematic body of concepts, especially about human life. Okay? Worldview and ideology, do you see how they're similar? They're a little bit similar. A worldview is the way you see something. An ideology is kind of how you think about that view. Okay? Now let's look at this one. Ideologue. An often blindly partisan advocate or adherent of a particular ideology. Okay? Now, I couldn't find a word ideologue to go with worldview. But do you see what I'm saying? An ideologue, an often blindly partisan advocate or adherent of a particular ideology. In this case, this is what this guy is becoming, an ideologue. And also, I want to talk about this. I've heard this word ideologue before. This is the first time I ever heard this. I used to live in Harrisburg, and I would drive to Jonestown, back and forth to Jonestown. It's like a 45-minute drive before I moved to Lebanon. And I forget, I worked in the morning, but whenever I got off of work on the radio, it was El Rushbo. Anyone know El Rushbo? It was Rush Limbaugh. You know? Yeah, Marisol knows. How do you? Oh, whatever. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh. And he had met with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And he was talking about, what was his name, the Italian guy? Scalia? Justice Scalia? And he's like, I can't do a Rush Limbaugh impression. Forgive me. I talked with the Justice Scalia, and he was telling him about the process of the Supreme Court making decisions. And Rush Limbaugh was saying, well, I assumed that this was... I had always assumed that the Supreme Court meets together and there's really high-level intellectual discourse and passionate debating about what's right and what's wrong for the good of the country, and that they are hashing things out and making hard decisions in a tough job. And he said, well, Justice Scalia told me that there is zero discussion. According to Rush Limbaugh, Chief Justice told him everybody on the Supreme Court is a hardcore ideologue, and they do not talk to each other one word. They have already voted. There's no point in discussion. They know how they're going to vote before they even get the bill in front of them. That's the Supreme Court, okay? And that was back maybe 10 years ago or whatever. There's no debating happening on the Supreme Court. They're hardcore ideologues, the way that Matt Walsh is an ideologue. But if he's an ideologue, what worldview does he have? Okay? So I got a list of worldviews. If you type in list of worldviews in the internet, you will find a whole lot. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got like 5 or 6 here. One of them is agnostic. I sympathize with this because I'm going to summarize it. An agnostic worldview is just, I don't know. It's a great place to start. You know who can't learn anything? Who can't learn something? Somebody who already knows everything. If you're agnostic and you don't know something, that's a fine place to start. I sympathize with that in a lot of ways. I don't know everything about everything, and I'm becoming more comfortable with that. But I wasn't always. In fact, that used to be the number one thing that being agnostic was the number one thing that stopped me from having faith. Well, how does this work? What are you talking about? He's his own son, and who is he praying to himself? And his spirit is a separate person than him, but he's one and the same. I don't listen. I've heard that explained to me a million times. I don't know if I could fully hash it out to you right now, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, in a certain sense, what happens after you die? Do you go right to heaven? Is there a line? I don't, is there an elevator? Do you take a chariot? You don't know all this. The agnostic worldview is you're just not sure. And they kind of must have a piece with that somehow. Another kind of worldview is nihilism. This is a tough one to get stuck in. This is where a lot of the world is. Nihilism is a worldview of nothing matters. None of this really matters. Nothing means anything. There's no reason or rhyme to anything. There is no truth, right and wrong. No such thing. Just whatever is. Here's how I would view nihilism. Whatever. That's a bad worldview to me. That's a bad attitude to have as well, and that's kind of a trap to get in. I meant to say this. Okay, a humanistic worldview, a secular humanistic worldview, is the idea that mankind is the norm against what all other truths and values are compared. So that means that, whatever is good for mankind is good. Everything is compared to human beings, and that if it's good for me and mine, it must be good. If it's bad, it's bad. And it's a human-centered approach to seeing the world. Secular humanistic worldview. Interesting. Okay. How about this one? This is the craziest one. This is called the postmodern worldview. It says that reality is relativistic, pluralistic, fragmented, and that all truth is subjective to an individual's experience. This is the worldview of people who are really smart but maybe really crazy too. Reality is all relativistic. What's good and bad to me is different for you. To me, this tradition is good, and to him it's bad, and there's no truth to it either way. It depends on who you are, where you're standing, what time it is. Everything's in flux. Nothing is nailed down. It's all relativity. There's particles and waves all at the same time, and nothing is stapled. And I don't see how these people come to understand anything. But it's called a postmodern worldview. Okay. And this is the sneakiest one. That was postmodern worldview. This is called the modern worldview. Okay? And that is this. Science. The modern worldview is that truth and knowledge the modern worldview is about truth and knowledge. You can find truth and you can find knowledge in science, rationality, and logic. find truth in knowledge, in science, rationality, and logic. Doesn't sound too bad, but you see how now even this is sneaky though, because look, it's called the modern worldview. This is a scientific worldview. And here's the thing about science. Now, I learned this a while ago. Did you ever hear about lions? How when the lions are hunting a zebra, they go after the slowest one, the weak one at the bottom of the pack, the straggler behind. And that's the one they find, and who's the smallest and the weakest, whichever one has a limp, and they attack it. That's what the lions go after, right? Makes perfect sense. Never doubted it. I'm not a lion expert. I watched the Nature Channel, and you get interested in the big animals and the big hunting, and the cats are just beautiful. It's part of God's creation. It's just like art in motion. When they're attacking something, it's like violent and amazing. Okay, well, here's the thing. So there was a zoologist, and he's recently on Joe Rogan podcast. This is according to a zoologist. And they're studying these animals in Africa. And so what they do is they put a tag on them to keep track of them, because there's this whole herd of antelopes, whatever they're called. I don't know whatever the lions are going after, right? And so they put a tag in this thing to keep track of it. Yes, thank you, Abby. He's so good. And well, here's what happened. Every time they tagged an animal, they couldn't study it because the lion killed it every time. We put a tag on this zebra. That zebra's gone the next day. What's going on? Turns out, what they discovered is, no, lions, they don't hunt the slowest animal. They don't hunt the one with the limp or the oldest one or the one that sticks behind. They're hunting the one that sticks out the most. And incidentally, that's the slow one. And incidentally, that's the one that walks with the limp or whatever. But if you've got a big tag sticking in your ear, the lion zooms in on that one, and he's gone. Okay? Like I said, they go after the slow, and it makes perfect sense. Never doubted it. But how that was seen as, knowledge through rationality and logic, it wasn't true. It wasn't true. Okay? That was through the modern scientific rationale. We learned something new. And that's the thing about science, is that it changes all the time. And also I thought this was interesting. If you type in one word, the worldview, into Google, the first hit is the Merriam-Webster's definition of the word worldview. And what did I call it there? Weltanschauung. But the second hit is actually NASA.com, and it's actually a view of the world. How about that? That's from NASA. It's actually a view. It's kind of like a play on the phrasing. It's a view of the world. Right after the dictionary is NASA. Talk about scientific worldview, literally. But here's the thing. That's the flaw in the scientific and the modern worldview. And that's Matt Walsh. That's his worldview. And at least in this case, or to some degree, he's operating in a modern worldview. And it's hard not to, honestly, because we are in the world here, and we deal with these realities of challenges all the time. Now, let me tell you what goes into a worldview. This is from the definition. A worldview gives you it has a few points to it. Within a worldview, somebody has an idea of the origin of what humanity is, what morality is, of salvation, Or another way to put this is the challenges of the human condition and the way to meet them or overcome them. A worldview gives you your meaning, so what's it all about and what are you here for? And a worldview will tell you what is your destiny. Okay? Here's another one, the Marxist worldview. That's from Karl Marx. He's a communist, and his worldview is that everything's messed up because nobody's sharing enough, basically. And that people are greedy and they should be sharing everything. And so in his worldview, the origin of everything is inequality, and it's an oppressive class and the bougies and the proletariats, and they're always taking advantage of one to the other. Okay. For example. And in the scientific worldview, now like I said, the ideology in a worldview, it gives you a religion as well. And when we're talking with people, and like I said, I'm preaching to the choir right now, but when we talk to people, we don't appreciate the worldview that they have sometimes. Okay? Now I want to talk about Batman. So, Batman is a comic book crime fighter, and he dresses up like a bat. And see, he was victimized when he was young, and so he goes out and he solves crimes. Okay? And he dresses up like a bat, and if somebody is robbing a bank, he stops them. And what are you talking about? This is a comic book. This is not real. Who cares? Right? Okay, Batman, fine. He's a good guy. Yeah, but actually, he's a vigilante, and definitionally, vigilantes are criminals. And he's not a hero. He doesn't have a threat. What does it matter? It's a comic book. Okay? I hope somebody thinks that. But here's the thing. That's what the world is thinking about us. But God doesn't want you. It's a fairy tales. It's a comic book. What does it matter? We don't appreciate their worldview. And I don't necessarily have any answer to it. But it's the one thing I see over and over again. Even sympathetic people to wanting to know God and wanting to have faith, they're stuck in a religion or ideology or a worldview of modernism, which is a trap to them. And, okay. And another thing about, okay, so this is the best thing I have to an answer of this. It's about science as well. Now, actually, I'm not against science as much as I said, even though I don't really believe in science. I do believe in one kind of science. Now, the highest form of science is, does anyone know what the highest form of science is? The most purest science. This is the stuff. This is, you boil it down, this is what science is. It just doesn't get any black or white. It's numbers. Mathematics is the highest, purest form of science. And the further away you get, and this is how I've had success talking to these scientific modernist worldview people. Because this is rationality and logic. Okay? So science is numbers. Now, did you know that the science cannot tell you if it's hot or cold outside? What is the degrees? Do we have it? What is it, about 50? I don't know. Throw a number out. Give me a number. 57. Okay, 57. Science doesn't tell us if it's hot or cold outside. Science can tell us it's 57 degrees. 62, even better. And now it's up to us. Is 62, is that cold or is it cool? Somebody might say it's warm. Okay? It's a number. And our interpretation puts values on science. Okay? And that's why people like Matt Walsh are such hardcore ideologues into science that instead of them being able to use their logic and reasoning and gifts from God to see these numbers, what they're doing is the numbers are telling them what's true, instead of them deciding in discerning truth by using the science and using these numbers. So if you've gotten to the point where somebody who's born biologically female with the girls' room equipment and you're calling that a man, you lost the plot. Especially if you're making a documentary making fun of people who's allegedly done, you know. He's wrapped up in his scientific worldview. And that is something that I wanted to share that can help us to talk to the world. And because now I don't have much friends anymore because I'm just too busy at home. I have a few friends, and it's you know, I love my friends and my family and my brothers and that, and but this is where we find the common ground, is when I can we can see past each other's worldview and communicate and what's really happening and what's really going on in our lives. Now, our worldview, this is the best worldview of all. And now, I was like reading into this really late last night, and I didn't get a chance to fully research it, but we want to have a Christian worldview. And there was this great article that went on for like 100 pages versus Christian worldview versus a biblical worldview. Is it the same thing? I don't know because I didn't read it. But basically, we want our worldview to have Jesus at the center of it. Jesus, the science is going to deceive us. How many times has the science been settled? Weren't we all supposed to catch the flu and all die? Wasn't the science settled? Wasn't the world supposed to be flat and the science was settled? Or wasn't it, how many times has the science been used to directly hurt somebody? And how often is science used to undermine the Christian worldview? That, okay, here we go. Our worldview of our origin, God created us for a purpose. He loves us. He did not make us. God was not a nihilist and think, just for nothing. No. We have an origin. We are created for a purpose and with love. Okay? Humanity is in God's image. Okay? Our morality comes from God's will. Salvation is through His mercy. Our meaning is to, again, align ourselves up with God, to follow Christ's example, to love each other the way that Christ loved us. And that's our destiny as well. Christianity is the worldview. Yes, baby. Now, okay, and this is a question I wanted to give everybody, but I'll answer it first. What was Jesus' worldview? When you read the Gospels, what was Jesus' worldview? This is the closest that I could find to something, because remember, this word is only 150 years old, allegedly. But if you could ask Jesus what his worldview is, this is the closest thing that I could find to what I think that he would say. It's Luke chapter 22, verses 42. Luke 22:42, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Jesus, his world was about God's will. His worldview was not concerned about himself. He was dedicated first and foremost to serving God. That was his world. And in doing that, his whole life was, well, his life that we know that the Gospels is telling us was all about him loving his people, loving God's people, and serving them. And if that's our worldview, we are going to walk right over all these traps of postmodernism, of Marxism and nihilism and agnosticism and ism and all racism and sexism and all this. We completely sidestep this. This is not a problem with the worldview of doing God's will. The bad part is that sometimes it's not super crystal clear to me. And we can pray for God to show us. The thing that's so appealing about these other worldviews is they'll give you answers. The scientific modern worldview appeals to people because it tells them what they want to know. And and they get their numbers and they put it all together and they say, well, this must mean this. Well, they're misguided, but at least they're looking at the numbers and they're imagining that they're right. But how we interpret those numbers is that determines the way that we see things and the way we act. And that's the same thing with the Bible, I found out. Sometimes that's what's so amazing. Have you ever seen these people where they take the Bible and it's like they take the Bible in Hebrew and Greek and every letter has a number and they put all the numbers up and it's like the Matrix and they're going crazy connecting strings and dots and they it's like numerology. Have you seen this? Me personally, I'm just not good enough at math to tell you anything about that at all. It's kind of weird to me. Maybe, I just don't know. But one thing where the Bible is like this is, like before when we were looking at, I was talking about the book of Esther, and I was just, what does the Bible say versus, what we want it to mean. And just the same way that can be a trap with the science and the numbers in the science, that's where we can pray to have discernment in the Bible. Because I've noticed this sometimes. It's the corruption through the ideology and being an ideologue can happen in many different worldviews and ideologies, including with the Bible. So that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to give you an insight into the way that you think and the way that you can relate to people that you want to share your faith with, and to maybe some of the reasons of why is the world so confused. I don't know if it was too helpful. But the overall message is to have the worldview of Jesus and to have a worldview that Jesus is the truth. I don't believe in science until recently, just over this week when I was looking at this. I decided I might believe that numbers are real, maybe, depending, because I haven't yet figured out how to make a math equation that lied. but it might be possible. I reserve that judgment, but I might start believing in math. But the one thing I absolutely believe in is Jesus, and I absolutely believe in God, and that if we keep Jesus as the truth, not numbers, not some ideology, that we are facing the right way, we're going to God, and that all the other isms and ideologies will fall into place. And that's what I wanted to hope to share and to leave you to think of. And that's what I want. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. What are your thoughts? I got a lot of things I want to say about that. It's interesting how many things in life, there's patterns that develop, right? There's things that we identify with as being kind of preferable or more nearly correct, and we can jump on that thing. That's a lot of what Eric was talking about. How many of you like Matt Walsh? How many of you have listened to his stuff, like him? Okay? You feel a little defensive when Eric's like, the guy, he's kind of messed up. He's off there left field. But this is a trap that I was feeling recently. I was actually listening to it was an interview that Matt Walsh was doing with Jillian Michaels. She's a lesbian. She's a talk show host. She has a wife, and they were talking about marriage. And the thing that bothered me, because I've listened to Matt Walsh, and I like his ability to articulate he's a very disagreeable person. He doesn't mind just being disagreeable to people to their faces, which is one of the things that is necessary if you're not going to get sucked into somebody's wrong thinking. You got to be willing to stand apart from that, right? And the thing that bothered me in the interview was that he was reluctant to make a statement about marriage as a religious statement. He wanted it to be a scientific, he wanted to come into the thing of like, well, marriage isn't sustainable. It's a man and a woman. They can't reproduce as two women. And she was saying, well, like, look, we have a part in the world. In a lot of ways, listening to that interview, I came away feeling more like she did a better job of defending her position than what he did because of the way the discussion went. But here's the thing. If we have a view of the world which is a kingdom of heaven view, or the way Jesus saw it, which is the will of the Father, the kingdom of heaven is your will being done on earth as it is in heaven. To me, that's the worldview of the Christian, is God's will being carried out on earth the way that it is in heaven, which in heaven there's no disagreement, there is no deviation from the will of God. And so, I'm just quit apologizing for having a biblical kingdom of heaven worldview. God created male and female. Like, what more authority do you need than the creator of the bits and pieces of the world that are operating? Like, that's just the way it's gonna work, right? Like, stop trying to argue your point based on the other person's definitions. And that's one of the things that you talked about. Science appoints definitions, and they say, well, these are the terms we're going to use, and they don't completely encapsulate the whole truth of the matter. They encapsulate 90% of it, and we kind of like it because it seems to defend what we want to defend. But then in that 10% where it deviates, we don't know what to do with it. And how do you relate to that when you've chosen to use the words that people use, right? Like, if you're going to play a game that you really don't like, and somebody else sets the rules, when you agree to the rules, you get yourself in a place where you don't really like the game, but you're kind of stuck because you started playing it their way, and it's like, how do we get out of it? So, yeah, thank you. You started off with a lot of stories, a lot of stuff, and brought it into, like, where we are. Like, how do we relate to that as Christians?
I had something else too. When I was looking at Ewa Klapkowska and her myself looking at some weirdo Marxist Polish language weblog, and this is where I found the truth of it. And somebody who has a heart to love somebody, if that's where they're going, what a shame, because Christians should be there to love those people too.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts? Anything that stood out to you? Anything or questions, or anything you want to say here before we move to the mealtime of our service? Sure, discussion can continue then as well. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Any announcements or prayer requests or testimonies that you have?
I have an announcement.
Yep.
I'm gonna be volunteering people for a church cleaning day, not next weekend, the weekend after next weekend. And so it's up to you to volunteer or be volunteered. It's voluntary.
So you're going to move to conscription if the volunteers don't meet quota?
Yes.
The draft?
It's not a draft. It is selective service. It's up to you to select who it is. And we're going to be raking leaves.
When?
Not this weekend. Wait, what is this?
So the first weekend in November?
Yes. It's going to be
November 2.
November 2. And I was thinking after the service, or on a Saturday, or whatever the volunteers can do. But today I will be standing in front of the door, letting everyone go, whether or not they volunteer.
We have a family gathering November 2nd, so we have plans all day the 2nd.
Okay.
So whatever
It's like
we
I said,
get,
it's voluntary.
whatever we get volunteered for, will
It's
have
all
to be a
voluntary.
different day.
And if you have like rakes and shovels, or some Windex, or anything like that, the plan is that when we all get here, God will guide us, and we will come out better than when we got here. That's the idea.
This is good. So the basement needs cleaned. That's one of the things that's been just sitting, and we'd like to do a thorough cleaning down there. Coming into winter, it'd be nice to have another spot that we can utilize. Just good cleaning. Probably some of the heat registers we'll go through, maybe blow them out with an air compressor or something, just to clean that up. Outside cleanup. So, and if there's stuff that you know that needs done, notify Eric or myself or somebody. Like, if there's things you know that should be addressed here, let us know. Let's try to do it ahead of time. In the women's restroom, the commode was running a couple of times, and I think the chain was too short. It pulled the flapper up and it got stuck, and it would just run. So on Wednesday night when we had brothers meeting, it was running. So I think we volunteered a lot of water to the waste management plant. But anyway, I think I fixed it. I put a longer chain on, but just take note of it. If you're in there, if you ever go in there and it just runs and runs, just let me know if it ever happens, because I don't want to end up with a huge water bill again. So I think we're good. All right. Anything else? Okay. Announcement. Okay, we had brothers meeting and we talked about some stuff. And so we volunteered all the ladies here to take care of the children on the first and the third Sundays. So you have ladies class second and fourth Sunday. Steve had brought up the thing of having an adult Bible study. We thought, well, what we should probably do is, as men, spend some time doing that. So what we're going to do is on the off Sunday, when you're not having class in the back, us men are going to go back there and we're going to spend some time, and you all can just do with the children what we have been doing on the second and fourth Sundays, right? So whatever, just have a class or just have all the children here together, or however you want to take care of it. So we're going to start that November 1st, or November 3rd, the first Sunday in November, and probably look into finding a little bit of a study, kind of like you're doing, something along those lines. But at this point, we don't have any curriculum. So I guess if you can organize yourselves how you want to handle that. You want to just be in charge of appointing people? Eric can tell you how to do it. Stand at the door and watch how he volunteers people, and then you can follow his lead on that. All right, any other announcements that you have?
I had mentioned my Uncle Paul
Yeah.
in a prayer request the other day. The hope was that he would come home yesterday. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. His blood pressure dropped again when they were doing dialysis. So he is still in the hospital. And she had sent a prayer request this morning that he had called her and said during the night he threw up again. And they weren't sure if it was his heart or the feeds that he's getting through his feeding tube. At this point, he has a feeding tube. He's not eating anything orally, like it's all going through his feeding tube to try to give his digestive system a break for his pancreas to heal. So they weren't sure at the point where she sent the message, they weren't sure if it was the feeds or if there was something going on with his heart, because the nurse did notice something on the heart monitor and had called the doctor in. So he's in some ways making progress and going backwards. So just keep on praying for him and for the family.
Where's he at in the hospital?
He's at Hershey.
Okay.
He had originally, he was here in Lebanon, and about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, they moved him to Hershey. So he is at Hershey right now.
Okay. Let's just keep praying for him. God, we ask for Paul right now that you would intervene in all the things that men are doing to try to stabilize the systems that you put in place in his body. God, all of this is completely pointless apart from his body functioning the way that you designed it. So we ask in the name of Jesus, based on his provision, his broken body, his shed blood, that Paul would receive the healing in his body that you intend for him to have, and that it would be a testimony of your power and a testimony of your goodness, and that he would be able to walk out of this hospital with his health restored. We pray it in Jesus' name. I also ask for the family that you would give them the grace, the patience, the peace as they walk through this time, to stay focused on the fact that you are good and that there is nothing in you that is evil, and that this sickness that is coming against his body is not from you, but that it is the work of death in him, and to stand in faith against it and to stay in a place of faith towards you. In Jesus' name. So quickly, people that we see that are healthy, you know, whether it's an accident or a sickness, it's only a step between us and death. And David talked about that. Teach me to number my days so that I can apply my heart to wisdom. Like our humanity, the fact that when you're young, you don't really think about the fact that at some point you're going to die. You know you will. Like, you know that. That's what happens. People get older and eventually they pass on. But it's something that the older we get, the more we tend to think about those things, or the closer we are to people that have died. And yeah, it's a good thing to think about. The fact that time is a temporary thing, and to be wise about the time that we have. Okay, any other announcements? Any other prayer requests? Any testimonies? Yes.
About the charity we went to earlier.
Yeah.
I just, I wanted to say that was an amazing testimony that the church gave to this woman and her mother, that they're feeding people in Lebanon, and she said that she had like a street church where she was praying and hugging all these people that are hungry, and how she had started. She said she was just making hot sandwiches in the back of her car, in the back of her truck, and just handing it to people. And in 1 year now, God has moved so many things to where she has a building and volunteers and a whole network, which is now hopefully will include our church, of people helping her to give people hope, and I thought that it was just really amazing. It was kind of unbelievable almost, but then they were there and we saw it, and I just think that that was a great testimony.
Yeah. The other thing is they're starting a thrift store. Julia had seen the ad on Facebook. They're looking for donations. Clothing, houseware, stuff you want to donate. In the thrift store, they're going to sell stuff to basically pay for the food, and then they'll also donate some of the clothing items to people. Like they'll bag it up on size, and it's almost like a bag lunch. It's like a bag wardrobe. You just, here's, what size are you? Here you go. Here's clothes, coat, whatever for you. And so volunteers, their thrift store is open Wednesday, 3 days a week, I think, at this point. So, like, if you want to volunteer, I can't tell you what, but I think there would be Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. There would be an opportunity to volunteer, like probably sorting stuff, helping in the thrift store. There's a lot of stuff to do. So if that's something you're interested in, it would be a good thing to be a part of. So yeah, it was encouraging to be there and see, people without a big organization behind them, just people doing what they can do, and putting everything they have on the line for it. So I feel like the money that we gave them was